Kevin Jennings needed to have his best game ever, and he did. And now he's got the opportunity to be one of the most impactful Mustangs in the program's history.
You are Locked On SMU, your daily podcast on the SMU Mustangs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is Locked On SMU. Welcome to a fresh week off of a victory over Miami. I'm Grayson Singleton. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day as well here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And before we go any further, I want to tell you that our episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Coming up on the show today, we're also going to give flowers to Rhett Lashlee. The school bet on him, and Lashlee, at least for this week, delivered and sort of restored confidence that he is this program's coach. Plus, we ended last week talking about do it for the kids. Well, SMU did it for the kids as the recruits on campus were highly impressed by SMU's environment and, of course, the overtime victory. But let's go ahead and dive into Kevin Jennings, because Kevin Jennings, if you want to sum up the roller coaster that is the SMU quarterback from South Oak Cliff High School in the middle of Dallas, Texas, you would have to sum it up as a roller coaster, because he presents some incredible highs. He presents incredible leadership and toughness. But when it's been bad with Kevin Jennings. I don't think there's no two ways around that. And while he's been a lot more consistent this year, I mean, how many really bad games has Kevin Jennings had? The Wake Forest game? And that's really about it. He played well against Baylor, played decent against TCU. He hasn't had that really one stinker of a game outside of last week. But what I saw from him on Saturday, I mean, it was a legacy performance. And that's what SMU was going to need, because when you're going up against a team who has more talent than you, is healthier than you, and especially is still controlling its own destiny in most of the sense of the word for a trip to the conference championship and has playoff aspirations, you have to bring your best. You have to bring your A+. And hurt ankle that got even more hurt coming off of a game where the ankle got even more hurt, and he played miserably too. KJ delivered. 29 of 44, 365, and a touchdown. Also had a touchdown run as well, where we saw his legs re-enter the picture. And you combine all of that with when and where and how all of this was needed. The fact that he, as a passer, was still very, very good, borderline elite as a passer. I mean, just think about how much better that completion percentage would be if you take away the drops, right? There were quite a few drops in this game that could have elevated that to a 33 of 45, a 34 of 35, right? So KJ, in terms of operation, in terms of delivery, and in terms of the intangibles like toughness and leadership, you can see how this team rallies around the dude. And when you combine the fact that people rally around a guy and he's producing, because there are some people who are charismatic enough and who exude enough leadership qualities where people galvanize around them, but they're just pedestrian. You know, they're just another guy in terms of on the field performance, right? But Kevin's not that dude. In ACC play, obviously we know the Wake Forest game is a black eye on this, but in ACC play, Kevin Jennings has been one of the best quarterbacks in the conference. Like that's not an overstatement. That is who Kevin Jennings has been the entirety of the season, and that's before we get to the boost that he brings to SMU with his intangibles. And that showed out. Executed the game plan well, hit the quick passes, stretched the ball down the field, once again was accurate pushing the ball to the boundary, which was something that he struggled with against Wake Forest, but something he had been really good at for most of the season. Continued to make plays, and it just almost seems as if once he steps on the field, you can see the lingering effects of the ankle injury, but you don't see the ankle injury. And what I mean by that What I mean by that is that it's as if he just finds a way to stash that pain nerve, the part of your brain that says, hey, we are in pain here. He just finds a way to stash that in the back of his head and suppress it. And he goes out there and plays. He made plays with his legs when he needed to. He's always been extending plays and buying time with his legs, even after the ankle injury. Like this is some warrior type stuff from him. And then obviously we saw the ankle get rolled up on and him hobble off the field. And at that point, me, you, and everybody else thought, oh, this might be the breaking point, right? Because you can play through an injury and play through an injury and play through an injury. Now, normally this sort of thing has to do with soft tissue and muscle injuries, not necessarily ankle sprains. But eventually, sometimes there is a breaking point. And you thought you saw it in a moment that has been captured on video and aggregated to no extent. There are pictures galore of this. And then he comes back in. And at that point, you're like, okay, we've got some hope again. I mean, that is legacy-defining stuff. Now, the other part of this is I think Kevin Jennings has the chance to be the most impactful player, one of the most impactful players in SMU's history. I'm talking right up there, but not eclipsing Eric Dickerson and Craig James and all these other dudes that built SMU to the heights really where, it was last year, because SMU was perennially doing that last year, right? So you're not eclipsing those dudes. But in terms of the modern era, you have to take into account context here. SMU, back from the dead, right, makes a college, well, really first, before we get to that, jumps into a Power 4 conference where it had never been, jumps into a Power 4 conference, then makes the college football playoff in its first year in a Power 4 conference, runs the table going 8-0, and then they are still, by the way, 4-1 in conference play right now. They sit 4-1 in conference play right now and still have an opportunity. And I told y'all something was going to happen because Georgia Tech lost this week to NC State. Now, I thought the team that was going to fall was Virginia. I thought them going cross-country to Cal would have been a pitfall there, but credit the Cavaliers for winning that game in the fashion that they did. But you're in a position still, if something goes right, for you to make the college football playoff by going to the ACC championship and possibly winning it. If they were to do that again and be a one-loss Power 4 conference team in its first 2 seasons in the conference, you can't look past the quarterback and look past his impact, especially with the way Rhett Lashlee said, all right, Preston Stone's not going to be our dude to do this. It's going to be Kevin Jennings. And he does it in back-to-back years, if that is the route that this season goes on. So if that is to happen, it's going to be because of Kevin Jennings. They're not going to do that. This team is not constructed to win at that kind of a level with the quarterback just being a passenger. No, it will be because of the quarterback if that happens. So in light of all that, and in the context with which this team is playing, and then the way that this team is built, if SMU sees elevated success this year, Kevin Jennings is in the conversation for one of the most impactful SMU Mustangs to ever put on the uniform. To me, that's indisputed, because this year he has beaten Clemson, who I know that doesn't carry as much weight as it usually does. If it did, SMU would be ranked right now. But they beat Clemson on the road, and then you came home after a devastating loss and toppled Miami. The preseason, ACC number 2 team, but still had the expectations of being in the conference championship, if not making the college football playoff. And you pretty much ended that. I mean, the college football playoff thing is a wash for Miami. And your chance to go to the college football playoff by squeaking your way to the ACC championship game and, seeing what could happen is still alive. That's why Kevin Jennings is that dude. Legacy performance. And then if the season continues to go up and up and up, his legacy is going to be elevated as well, because it will be because of him. And SMU could possibly be back on the heights that it's supposed to be with him as a starting quarterback. Coming up next, Rhett Lashlee had a bounce back day, and his pockets got a bounce as well. We'll talk about that. Locked On SMU continues. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, and the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. But that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to you and me, the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices, with no surprise fees. What you see is going to be what you pay. I pulled up the Game Time app, and in just a couple of taps, I saw amazing deals, like college football games as low as $25. And of course, y'all know my favorite part of the app. You can see what the view from your seat is going to be before you even buy. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. Appreciate you making us your first listen of the day. Again, I'm Grayson Singleton on Locked On SMU. Again, hey, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Gray_Singleton2. Would love to interact with you guys there. And also make sure you subscribe to the channel. You'll get notified of when we release all of our new content. Okay, so we talked about Kevin. Let's talk about the coach, Rhett Lashlee. And Rhett Lashlee got himself a lot of dissenters after the Wake Forest game. I mean, predictably so. You were upset. You shouldn't have lost that game. And by the way, you lost the game in a fashion where you looked terrible. And it's not after a game like that, It's not after a game like that where you get a payday, right? But that's what happened. I mean, just 12 hours before the game against Miami, Rhett Lashlee probably went into somebody's office and said, hey, look, we're going to win this game. We are going to win this game, because there's no other circumstance that would say, hey, let's give this dude an extension now. Now, obviously, the coaching carousel, being on the drugs that it is, in college football had a lot to do with that. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Florida job being open, Auburn now coming open with Hugh Freeze being fired, Arkansas, Coach Lashlee's alma mater being open. Hell, Miami might get sick of Mario Cristobal, depending on how this season's going to end. But there's a lot of external factors in the college football environment that probably had a lot to do with the extension coming when it did. But nevertheless, the dude got paid coming off of what might be his most miserable game as a head coach. And then he did that. And here's what I got to say. About this game against Miami. Yes, we can talk about the Kevin Jennings performance and the Kevin Jennings legacy game. This dude had this team ready to go, organized. They knew exactly how they were going to attack. And by the way, they were disciplined. Do you get this? These are the discipline stats. All right. Penalties. SMU 4 to Miami's 12. So they only had a third of the other team's penalties. Turnovers. SMU turned it over one time on the fumble on that funky end around play, which probably Lash should not have gone with, trying to hand the ball off to RJ Maryland. Like, that just probably wasn't a good choice. But Miami turned it over twice. So you won the discipline plays. Now, you lost third down, but in terms of, if I was going to ask you, who played the more buttoned up football game? Who always seemed like they were in control of their element? Who always seemed like they never went outside of themselves and stayed within themselves? The answer to all three of those questions would be SMU, which at that point, that goes back to the coach. And I said coming into this game, Lashlee's going to have to adjust, but in terms of just a game plan, you're going to have to be able to figure out how to stop Miami's running game, and you're going to have to get the ball out of the quarterback's hand quick. I told y'all this was the Louisville strategy. They took whatever the defense gave them, get the ball out to the playmakers, hope they can do something. Scheme up a way to get the ball into the hands of the playmakers and not have a whole lot of pressure on the quarterback. because it was a good secondary with a ferocious pass rush. And they did that to damn near perfection. And then on the occasion, they draw something up. They draw something up to get a man wide open. And Rhett Lashlee drew up a great route combination for Yamir Knight to create that bust in the coverage and get open for the touchdown after the first Ahmad Moses interception. Right? Like that's a well drawn up play to exploit the weakness of the defense and get you a coverage bust. Right? Like that is still the coach too. And he, by the way, he did have to make some adjustments because SMU never figured out how to run the football. Never did. It never happened. But in the fourth quarter and overtime, this is what stood out to me too. You had never been able to run the football, but you could tell that SMU was tired, or excuse me, Miami. Miami's defensive front was tired, right? You could tell it. I mean, I could tell watching on TV that Miami D-line was tired. So what does Rhett Lashlee do? Tempo, tempo, tempo. Don't give him a chance to rest. We're going to go quick, keep going quick, keep going quick. And it ends up in a situation where the Miami pass rush kind of flounders. Now, it never died all the way because those are two really good defensive ends and a really good defensive line in totality. But he took advantage of Miami's fatigue. And then once we get to overtime, let's just run it. They ran the ball for 25 yards in overtime. That kicked them into positive yardage. And I know that's not a very positive thing to say, but again, context matters. Context matters, right? Miami's defensive line was tired. You had started to establish physicality late in that game, which is kind of a strange thing to do. But he took advantage of the trend that was going on at the time of the game. And that's coaching right there. That is coaching, and that is an understanding of the present circumstances of the game. My offensive line is starting to get a push. Their defensive line is starting to wear down. I know we have sucked at running the football the entire game, but I see an opportunity here with my banged up quarterback who has gotten us this far. Let me carry it the rest of the way. And he ends up having TJ Harden carry it into the end zone. That's coaching. From game planning to adjusting to figuring out how to push us through the finish line. That's that. Now, that's the Rhett Lashlee side of things. I do want to shout out Scott Symons here and his defense because they forced 2 turnovers and forced Carson Beck into a bad game in which they didn't touch him, right? Like Cam Robertson was out, and this has a lot to do with it, but SMU got no pass rush whatsoever. None. Carson Beck was not sacked, and I'm going to be frank with all of you. I did not see a way that SMU was going to win this game if they never touched Carson Beck. I did not. To me, a guy in the pocket who is as capable of a thrower of the football and a distributor of the football, if you weren't going to touch him, I thought that was going to be a problem. Turns out, Carson Beck is just bad at football. I've held off saying that, but he is bad at football, and SMU took advantage of it. Last thing I'll say about this. That was an impressive job on the defense, and this is where Rhett Lashlee comes back into this, because I think he had something to do with the game planning. Miami ran the ball for 4 yards a carry, but you know what they weren't able to do? They weren't able to get that outside tackle stuff going. And I think it did limit Miami a little bit. I think it made Miami uncomfortable. They didn't do some incredible job stopping the run, but they did a good enough job in the ways they did stop the run to make Miami slightly uncomfortable and come out of itself. And that's all you've got to do with a Mario Cristobal team, is make them just uncomfortable enough to where they start being undisciplined. And they did that in a major, major way. All right, one more segment to go, as SMU not only impressed the fans, not only gave themselves reason to celebrate, but also impressed the recruits that were on campus. We'll tell you what they said on the other side to close up the show here on Locked On SMU. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride a hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything, from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is the one that's making that final push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, I want to talk about one more thing before we get out of here, and that is the recruiting trail. And, I think the recruiting trail, we got to start off with our man Malachi Ziegler, who showed up in a Bob the Builder outfit for Halloween, saying that he was going to be the builder of this 2027 recruiting class. And I'm not going to lie. Well done, my man. Well done. But Sam Spiegelman, national recruiting analyst in the Mid-South area for Rivals, broke down where SMU stands with a bunch of recruits and what they thought about this game. And I think also, keep this in mind, we're not the only ones that are aware that Rhett Lashlee got the extension. Right. We're not the only ones. The recruits know that their head coach just got paid. And not only do they know the head coach just got paid, he's a big advocate in terms of getting everybody around him paid, be it the school, the conference, and the players too. So Rhett is a very, how would I like to say this? Gravitational person in terms of recruiting. People are going to gravitate to the way Rhett Lashlee does things. Okay, so here is what, by the way, you fans brought it too, because here's what some of the recruits said. Aldra Miles, the atmosphere on top was top 3 I've ever experienced during my visits. Coach Lashlee and SMU as a program just showed that we are in a new era of SMU football. The game was well coached on all sides of the ball and was a great statement win for Coach Lashlee and SMU. Ooh, that's good praise right there. Evan Goodwin, 4-star offensive tackle commit from Arkansas, the state of Arkansas. Great day to be a Mustang. I got to take the goalpost down. Not something you get to do on every visit. Just really great for all of us commits that were there. So that's the guys that are already locked in with SMU. How about blue chip wide receiver Julian Caldwell, wide receiver from Argyle, Texas, 4-star guy who's being recruited by a lot of people, including the other team I cover, Oklahoma, and, some other high-profile competitors. I love the passing schemes they run at SMU. I feel like I can really make an impact early there. I've always had a strong relationship with the coaching staff, and they really make it feel like a family. SMU has always been one of my top schools, but this win definitely took them a big step forward. Okay, and there's a lot more. There's a lot more on that. You can read them at Rivals. Sam Spiegelman did that composition. But you see right there, by the way, I think the Malachi Ziegler interview kind of showed me this, but SMU is recruiting a lot of really intelligent kids. Because, those aren't just, hey, I had a good time. It was loud. We took down a goalpost. Rhett Lashlee's a good coach. No. They're seeing stuff. They're seeing stuff with SMU and can see themselves fitting in. And I think that's also a credit to the recruiting done by the staff, too. We would be remiss to give them credit, to not give them credit, in terms of that. Because they are allowing these kids to see, hey, this is how you would fit with us. You might want to come. So there is that. But I will begin to reiterate this. SMU is in the heart of Dallas-Fort Worth, really in the heart of Dallas. And now you've got an exciting football team with a chance to make yourself a good chunk of change in the middle of a really cool place to live. And all you have to do, you got all of that set up. All you have to do is combine it with a more than capable product, and you're good. I don't think people understand how dangerous SMU is. If you can consistently put together an excellent product, USC has constantly butchered this. USC and Miami in recent years, not historically, but in recent years, USC and Miami have constantly butchered this because a lot of these colleges are in small towns, right? They're not in big metropolitan areas. Like Oklahoma is 25 minutes outside of Oklahoma City, but I mean, it's up for debate what kind of market Oklahoma City is. So you get what I'm saying here. Like Alabama's in Tuscaloosa, that is close to absolutely nothing. Ole Miss is in Oxford, is really not close to absolutely anything, right? But you've got a few colleges who are in the middle of metropolitan areas. Nobody cares about USC in Los Angeles, and Miami continues to crap all over itself, right? Like those are two teams that have butchered the advantage of being in the heart of a city. And if you're Miami football, especially with the history that it had, even into the 21st century, like that's a colossal failure on their part. And even USC too, going back to the mid 2000s, right? With Bush and Lindell White and Matt Leiter and stuff, you should be able to build on that because you're in LA. That should be able to attract people, especially in the NIL era. But obviously, they have butchered that. If you're SMU, you've got to take advantage of being in the heart of a market like that. And yes, the Mavericks are always going to exist. Yes, the Cowboys are going to be number one. But if history tells you anything, and we say history repeats itself, people will care about SMU if you are worth caring about. And they are slowly making their way towards cementing that, right? They showed us we should care and that we should watch and we should be intrigued last year. But can you cement it and then sustain it? And I think a win like that over Miami certainly goes a long way in toward accomplishing that. So once they accomplish that, that's when SMU can really start to be really dangerous because you've got the resources, you've got the location, you got a hell of a school. It's a nice campus too. Been on there quite a few times. And you're going to be able to make these kids a really good amount of living in an economy that ain't great. Like, and you can compete for conference championships and ultimately the college football playoff. Like, this school is very, very dangerous if they're able to put something sustained together time after time after time again. And they're getting closer to doing that because they've got a win over Clemson at Clemson, pretty much ending the Clemson reign of dominance over the ACC. I think that was the final nail in the coffin. And then you beat the team most high profile. After Clemson, it was them who was supposed to be the leader in the clubhouse for the ACC championship game. You knocked them off at home in overtime. Why not SMU? Why not? And I think the kids are starting to figure out that, wait, I can be a part of this. Why not us too? All right, that'll do it for Locked On SMU here on a Monday. Hey, make sure you check out our ACC show, Locked On ACC, hosted by Alex Dono. You heard him on the show last week, along with Kenton Gibbs, as they'll take you through all these storylines, including SMU, and just everything that makes this conference the most interesting one in college football. So check out Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Just like you can find this show. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Come back with us tomorrow here on Locked On SMU.